Well, welcome to this edition of Prophetic Perspective. Guess who I have with me today? Governor Mike Huckabee, who was the governor of Arkansas when I was stationed in Arkansas. Governor, I'm so glad you are here with us in Dallas, Texas, actually in Denton, for our annual Bible conference.
It's an honor to be here, Tim. And, you survived your time in Arkansas. We were glad that you were there for the time. And you left your mark.
I think I thrived in Arkansas. My first child was born in Arkansas. I loved Arkansas.
It's
really
a great
enjoyed
state.
It.
And
It is.
we're very proud of a lot of things there, one of which is the air base, in which almost every C-130 pilot that ever flies one of those airplanes is going to come through Little Rock Air Base
They
at some
certainly
point.
are. The Rock, yes, sir.
Yeah, it's a
Well,
great asset to the state.
I was there when you ascended to become the governor, and that was quite a dramatic tale in and of itself. I know they locked you out of your office for a season.
It was pretty crazy. When I became a lieutenant
That's
governor,
when that happened.
I was locked out of my office. They actually nailed the door shut. And people think that's an apocryphal story, and the Wall Street Journal sent a reporter, John Fund, to Little Rock to see, was this true or was it just some embellished story? And he did report in the Wall Street Journal, no, there are physical nails in the door that kept me out for 59 days when I had been elected and sworn in as lieutenant governor. It was a bizarre time, but as it turned out, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because people who didn't even vote for me, didn't like me, were so incensed by that treatment that the next year, when I ran in a regular election, because this was a special election in 93, 94, I ran for re-election, I had the largest percentage of votes that any Republican had ever had in the history of the state. And it was largely because the people who did that, which by the way were from the White House under Clinton, turned me into a martyr.
Well, I tell you what, it proves two things. One, you can't keep a good man down. And two, sometimes the Lord has a unique method of elevating those who he has on a path to do his will and his bidding. So I'm so glad that you overcame. We are more than overcomers, as we know, but that the Lord has had his hand throughout your career, not only in politics, but now as you continue in your original vocation, but always serving him.
Well, and that's, I think, the trajectory of any of our lives. It's that we're called to follow Jesus.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that we're necessarily going to be in a vocation that is always the same at all times. It's that we're going to be following wherever he leads us. And he may lead us into some places that we'll say, are you sure about this? God, are you sure? Because I think this is what you're calling me to do, but it doesn't make sense to me. But in time, it always does.
In time, it always does. And the other thing, instructive. I mean, I've often said I know two men from Hope, Arkansas. One I have great admiration for, and that, of course, is you. And yet, it seems to permeate who you are as a man that exudes hope and enthusiasm, not just for life, but for serving the Lord wherever he's led. But in this season right now, obviously, many of our viewers would testify, there seems to be mounting despair. And sometimes even within the church, people get discouraged and depressed. And yet we are called to be people of hope, not just optimists, but certainly not pessimists. We are marked by our hope. So given that you are a man from hope, how do you have hope?
I think it comes, first of all, knowing where I've come from. It helps to have perspective. And for me, that means looking back and realizing that as a kid growing up in pretty much poverty in a little unimportant southern Arkansas town that no one had ever heard of until Bill Clinton ran for president. I tell people growing up as a kid, I didn't have parents who could say, here, let me open my wallet and give you some money, go get a baseball or a baseball glove. If I wanted something, I had to work for it. So that meant when I was 5, 6 years old, pulling a little wagon around the neighborhood, picking up soda bottles and taking them in for the deposit. Got a little older, sold cards door to door, and then by the time I was 9 or 10, a bunch of us kids who were poor would get hired to go work in chicken houses, catching chickens.
Oh, man.
And there were two things I can tell you about catching chickens. Number one, you could make a little more money than you could picking up pop bottles.
Yeah.
But the worst thing is that it's the most miserable, awful job. And we were 9, 10 years old. If there had been an OSHA at that time, they would have shut that whole thing down. We were slave labor, 9, 10, 11-year-old kids. They take us out there at 10 o'clock at night. We'd work all night in the chicken house, catching chickens till 6, 7 in the morning. Then we'd go home, we'd have to be hosed off in our yards before our mothers would even let us in the house to take a bath because we were so nasty. I don't even have to describe.
Oh my.
And the technology of chicken houses back in the 60s was anything but pleasant. I'm amazed that I didn't catch some hideous respiratory disease.
You're probably immune from all those bird flus today.
Probably so.
Yeah.
But you know what happened, Tim? I tell you what, it motivated me because I'd come out of those chicken houses and I'd say, what do I have to do so I don't have to do this for the rest of my life? And my parents would say, well, you're going to have to work hard, get a good education, and treat people right. So instilled in me, I mean, hardwired at that point was get a good education, work hard, and treat people right, because I don't want to work in a chicken house for the rest of my life.
Well, I'll tell you what, that means with that story, you have one up on Rocky Balboa because he couldn't catch a chicken, and yet you are trained as a chicken catcher.
As a chicken catcher.
A chicken catcher. All right. Well, you can give me some notes and tips later in case I ever am faced with the need to catch a chicken. All right.
Just don't do it. Just tell him that it means going hungry, starve to death. But
I'll just go to Chick-fil-A and skip all the other steps.
Yeah,
all right.
absolutely.
I think I'll take your advice. Well, Governor, obviously, we're glad you are here with us in Denton, Texas. We look forward to your message about what gives us hope as believers in Jesus Christ. And obviously, you and I would say that hope is only possible if you know the blessed hope who is Christ.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tim.
Governor, Godspeed on you and all of your continuing ministry as the Lord has you right in the center of this world.
Appreciate that.
Yes,
God
sir.
bless.
Godspeed.